Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge, also pronounced Sabbath Lounge. A lot of times I like to make these YouTube posts based upon things I've been writing in my blog. My blog is itsyahushua.wordpress.com, kind of a collection of my thoughts and the journey that I've been on. And one of my posts from a few weeks ago was as long as the soda cans are red, white, and blue ones, in reference to a song in which you may love about a rock and roll lifestyle by a certain band, whom I will not name here. But I started this post talking about a little bit of history lesson. I used to teach history, and I always taught kids that basically American history can be kind of summarized like this. I'd always say, kids, can you imagine looking up one day and you see somebody camped out in your backyard and they're kind of ragged looking, kind of homeless looking, and they got a campfire going and they just randomly pop up in your backyard and you're like, okay, that's kind of weird. And all those kids, they would always go, well, my dad would come out with a shotgun and it's like, get off my lawn. And that's probably true. But let's just pretend for a minute that doesn't happen. And you get up the next day and there's another family camped out in your backyard. You're like, wow, that's weird. And another day, every day you get up and there's a new family just camped out on your property somewhere, front yard, backyard, side yard. They're building fires, there's smoke. They're cutting down your trees, they're cutting down things, or using your water hose. They didn't even ask you for your water hose. They've got an extension cord running out of your outside extension. They're using your electricity, they're using your water, they're using all your resources, and they just keep coming and keep populating, and pretty soon your whole yard looks like a homeless village and your whole neighborhood looks that way. And then they start moving in your house, eating all your food, just coming in, and you haven't even invited them. And pretty soon it gets so bad and your house becomes such a wreck and such a disaster, you just abandon it and you and your family pack up and leave and go find a new house. And then in your new space, eventually the same thing happens and you just keep having to move away. Well, that's kind of what we did with the American Indian. The American Indian were the people that lived in the house, so to speak, and the Europeans come in and pretty much just camp out there and just take their space away from them. And something that we decided to do as a country is we decided to get rid of the buffalo, thinking that if we get rid of the buffalo, we are going to eliminate their food source and we're going to eliminate them. And there's this giant famous picture of a guy standing on buffalo skulls. I mean, we just killed them by the millions, and it became a great sport, and we almost eliminate them to extinction thanks to some foresight from some leaders who finally went, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't kill every one of these guys, and we saved them from extinction. But we also eliminated the Indians. And so we have this history of that. And we also have a history, where we first started with the Puritans. Puritans came over here truly seeking religious freedom. They wanted to observe a Sabbath. They didn't want to do Christmas, Easter. They wanted to get away from those pagan festivals. And so you got that. And then you also have places like Jamestown. And there were some great people at Jamestown. In fact, James... is it Captain James Smith? I don't remember. But the guy that said, if you don't work, you don't eat. And he kind of saved the place, and from it becoming a dumpster fire. It already kind of was, but he helped turn it around. But Jamestown, they came to get rich or die trying. Many of them did die trying. But so you have this combination of the Puritans coming for religious freedom, and you have people that came just to make money. But there are a lot more people that came here just to make money than there were for the Puritans. But everybody has it in our mind that this country is built on religious freedom. And there is that. But I think also what happens is people take these ideas of the Puritans and somehow transfer them to people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and those guys were not the Puritans. They were far from it. They were politicians. We forget that. And they did tell itching ears what they wanted to hear. And so they did kind of manipulate and use that Christianity kind of thing to get what they wanted. So anyway, it's just important to do your research and know kind of where we began and how that came to be. Then I started thinking, well, did Yeshua live in a republic like ours? And I'm like, well, yes, he did. In fact, our republic is modeled after Rome's. And then I got to thinking, well, who could vote in the Roman system? Well, Yeshua couldn't vote because he didn't own property and wasn't necessarily considered in the wealthy class. But he could have definitely made that happen. He did have connections. He could have come here as a wealthy landowner and voted in the Senate and encouraged us all to vote. And show me the scriptures that say Yeshua said we should vote. He doesn't talk about it. It's not even mentioned. So, but here we get so caught up and we're all like, everybody should vote. If you don't vote, you're a terrible American. If you don't vote, you're a terrible Christian, or whatever you want to say. So people definitely get excited about this topic and almost judgmental about it. And if you don't vote for the right kind of person, well, you're just evil. Well, I don't know about all that. But Yeshua doesn't mention voting, but yet we act like it's such a big deal. So that got me thinking, well, what is his system of government? Well, guess what? It's a theocracy. Go look up the definition of a theocracy. And it's a form of government which a deity or religious institution is the source from which all authority derives. And yes, I'm looking at Wikipedia. Forgive me. But I don't like this creepy whatever deity that is. But theocracy definitely that's what that's what we're under. We're still under it, whether you acknowledge it or not. And one day, the true King of all kings is coming back, and he's going to make it clear that he is the man who comes around, as Johnny Cash famously once said. So I started looking up, what's the history behind the Pledge of Allegiance? And there's so much hubbub about the pledges and the national anthem, and people get all fired up about these things. And so I started researching about this. And first off, I think you got to start with Francis Bellamy. He's the guy that wrote the pledge. And here he is once again. I'm using Wikipedia. And he was this Baptist preacher. And some interesting things about him: he was a member of this society, Alpha Delta Phi, which is kind of interesting. It was an all-male institution, and for a long time, until like the 90s maybe, and then they started allowing women. So, is it a secret society? I don't think so, but it's definitely an interesting thing, that especially when you look at this symbol here, I'm like, what is that? So that he was part of that. And so basically he was asked, so let me show you where I got all this from. This was from Price Economics. And so basically, back in 1827, this guy that had this magazine called the Youth Companion, right here, which was an American children publication, was focused on virtue and piety and warned against ways of transgression. In the 1880s, there's a very widely circulated publication, and this guy Daniel Sharp Ford. That would be an interesting rabbit to chase. Is it connected to the Ford family? I don't know. But you should chase that probably. But he felt like the publication wasn't reaching its potential, so he wants to do this. At the time, a schoolhouse flag movement sought to place a flag above every school in the nation. And he became a big supporter of this. And so he has a marketing man. Notice 1892, there were marketing people. And so this guy, James, was asked to help come up with a marketing gimmick that would inspire schools to buy more flags and create a pledge. Children had to declare their undying love in 15 seconds or less. So, as a socialist, Bellamy wanted to include the words equality and fraternity in the pledge. And so that's the beginning of the pledge, and I think I'm almost out of time here. So I'm going to conclude this one here because I'm limited on time until I pay for this. So I will continue in the next version. Stay tuned for part 2. Thank you.